At my old hospital job, the hours that bothered everyone else never really bothered me. I was 26, broke, and trying to stack enough night differential pay to get out of my parents' house. So when transport offered me the graveyard shift, I took it without thinking twice. Midnight to 8 in the morning. Most of my job was simple. Move discharged patients downstairs, take paperwork from one building to another, bring lab samples across the campus when the tubes were backed up. Quiet work, easy money, at least on paper. The hospital looked different after midnight. During the day, it felt crowded, overlit, and loud in a way that kept your brain busy. At night, the whole place became stretched out and hollow. The fluorescent lights felt harsher, like they were exposing too much while still leaving entire sections of the hallway in this dim, dirty shadow. Doors that were open all day were shut. Waiting rooms emptied. TVs kept running to nobody. You started hearing things you never noticed before, like the click of badge readers 3 halls away, or a rolling cart somewhere above you, or a voice you couldn't quite place coming from an intercom that hadn't turned on. The first strange thing happened in my second week. At around 2:30 in the morning, I was cutting through the older wing to save time getting to radiology. That side of the hospital had been scheduled for renovation for years, but only half of it had been updated. One corridor looked normal, then the next one would have faded wallpaper, old room numbers, and doors with paint the color of nicotine. I was pushing an empty wheelchair, and as I passed room 214, I heard a woman say, very clearly, "Excuse me." I stopped right away. It came from inside the room. Not loud, not weak either, just normal, calm, like someone trying not to be rude. I backed up and looked through the small glass window on the door. The room was dark, empty bed, no patient, no monitor lights, no movement. I remember checking the whiteboard beside the door. The room had been marked out of service. I stood there for maybe 5 seconds, staring through that little window, telling myself I'd probably heard a TV from another room. Then the same voice said, "Can you help me?" That time it was closer to the door. I left the wheelchair right there and went straight to the nurse's station at the end of the corridor. 2 nurses were charting. I told them someone was in 214. One of them looked up at me with this expression that was more irritated than confused. She said, "No, there isn't." I told her I had just heard a woman speaking inside. The other nurse stopped typing and asked, "Did you open the door?" I said no. The first nurse leaned back in her chair and gave me this dry smile that felt practiced. "Don't open it if you hear that again." I laughed because I thought she was joking, but neither of them laughed with me. Then the second nurse said, "Just use the other hallway." That should have been enough to make me take it seriously. But when you're new somewhere, you assume everybody has weird little workplace superstitions. Every hospital has them. Floors people hate working on. Rooms staff don't like sitting near. Stories about call lights going off after patients die. I figured this was one of those things, and I tried to forget it. For a few nights, nothing happened. Then I started getting called to the older wing more often, not for transports, for little things that made no sense. Security wanted me to check whether a side door had been left cracked open. Environmental services wanted me to bring a supply cart down because one of their guys refused to go alone. Once a nurse from oncology asked me to walk with her to the medication room because, in her words, "I'm not dealing with that hallway by myself tonight." Nobody explained what that hallway meant. They just said it like I was supposed to know. Around my third week, I was in the basement break room at about 3:10 a.m., eating vending machine crackers and trying to stay awake. An older janitor named Luis came in, filled a paper cup with coffee, and sat across from me. He had worked there almost 20 years. He was one of those guys who always looked half asleep but noticed everything. Out of nowhere, he asked, "You been hearing her?" I asked who. He stirred his coffee for a second too long before answering. "Lady in 214. I felt this quick, cold rush in my stomach. I tried to play it off, but he saw it on my face. He nodded like that was confirmation enough. "Don't answer if she talks to you." I said, "Why does everyone keep saying that?" He looked toward the break room door even though nobody else was around. Then he lowered his voice. "Years ago, before they shut that side down, there was a patient there. Older woman, no family, confused sometimes. She kept calling staff into her room at night saying there was somebody standing in the bathroom. Nurses would check, find nothing, leave. She did it over and over. Last night she was there. One of the aides finally got annoyed and told her there was nobody coming for her. and to stop ringing if she just wanted attention. He stopped speaking for a moment. In the morning, they found the aide in that bathroom. Heart stopped. Face like she died scared. I said that sounded like a rumor. Luis gave me a look that said he didn't care whether I believed him. Maybe, but after that, people kept hearing the patient call for help even after she died. Then they started hearing the aide too. He stood up, threw his cup away, and before leaving said, "If you hear a voice asking you to come inside, keep walking. If you hear knocking after that, you run." That was the part that stuck with me. The next Friday night, I got stuck staying late because the morning transporter called out sick. By 4 a.m., the hospital had that dead stillness it only gets right before dawn, when even the machines seem tired. I had to bring paperwork from the ER to records, and the fastest route took me through the old wing. I remember thinking about taking the long way, then telling myself I was being stupid. The hall was empty when I entered it. No carts, no staff, no movement at all. Half the overhead lights were off for some reason, so the corridor looked striped with light and shadow. As I passed room 212, I heard the voice again. "Excuse me." I froze. Same voice, same calm tone. Only this time it sounded less like a patient asking for help and more like someone who already knew I'd stop. I kept walking. Behind me, the voice said, "Please." I got to room 214 and saw the door was open about 3 inches. That had never happened before. The room beyond it was black. Not dim, black. Like the darkness in there was heavier than it should have been. I slowed down without meaning to. There's this thing your body does when your brain is telling you to leave, but some dumber, deeper part of you needs to confirm the danger first. I think that's what almost got me killed. The voice came again, from inside the room this time, and it was different now. Thinner, tighter, strained. "Can you come here?" Then another voice from deeper in the room said, "Don't." I stopped so hard the paper slipped out of my hand. The first voice immediately changed. It went from weak and pleading to sharp, furious. "Come in." The door swung wider on its own. I didn't think. I backed away so fast I nearly fell. Then the knocking started. Not on the door. Inside the walls. 3 hard bangs to my left, then 3 to my right, then farther down the hallway, like something was moving inside the wall cavities, keeping pace with me. I ran. I heard my shoes slamming the floor, papers scattering behind me, and that knocking chasing me all the way to the nurse's station. When I came around the corner, I almost crashed into a resident coming off the elevator. He grabbed my arms and asked what happened. I couldn't answer. I could barely breathe. By the time security checked the hallway, room 214 was closed again. They found my paperwork all over the floor outside the room. And one thing I know I didn't drop: a plastic patient wristband. Old style. Yellowed, brittle. The name had mostly faded, but not completely. Under the cracked laminate, you could still read part of it. Maria V. The nurse who showed it to me looked pale when she realized what it said. She asked where exactly it had been found. I pointed to the doorway. She didn't tell me anything then, but Luis did later. Maria was the patient. I put in my resignation 2 nights after that. I told them I was leaving for another job, and nobody tried very hard to convince me to stay. On my last shift, just before sunrise, I went downstairs to turn in my badge. As I passed the old wing one final time, I saw someone standing at the far end of the corridor, a woman in a hospital gown, not moving, just watching. She was too far away to make out clearly, but I could tell one thing immediately: she wasn't alone. Something taller was standing just behind her, close enough to look attached. I turned around and kept walking. I didn't run that time. I didn't look back either. I made it to the elevator, went down to security, handed over my badge, and left before the sun came up. A month later, I ran into one of the overnight nurses at a grocery store. She asked where I was working now, and I told her I'd switched to a warehouse job. She said, "Good," like she genuinely meant it. Then she mentioned almost casually that the hospital had finally sealed room 214 during renovation. I remember feeling relieved for about half a second. Then she added, "Now whatever's there has been knocking from inside the wall outside 216. I still work nights. I still prefer them in a way. Fewer people, less noise, less pretending. But there's a point every shift, usually a little after 3 in the morning, when everything goes quiet for just a second too long. And every time that happens, I think about that dark room, that open door, and the voice that changed the moment I refused it. Because the part that keeps bothering me isn't that something in that hospital wanted me inside. It's that something else from deeper in the room warned me first. The gas station sat alone off a service road that barely counted as a road, the kind of place people only stopped at because there was nothing else for miles. During the day, it looked forgettable. One pump out of order, faded soda posters in the window, a small convenience store that smelled like burnt coffee and cardboard. But at night, especially after midnight, it felt cut off from the rest of the world. Beyond the edge of the lot, there was only darkness, flat fields, and a tree line that looked closer than it actually was. I took the graveyard shift there for 6 months when I was 19. The pay was terrible, but the manager told me nights were easy. Maybe 10 customers an hour, if that, he said. Truckers, drunks, insomniacs, just don't fall asleep. Most nights were exactly like that, quiet, long. Boring in a way that made every little sound stand out. The soft buzzing of the drink coolers, the hum of the fluorescent lights, the ice machine dropping cubes with a sudden crash that always made me jump no matter how many times it happened. After 2 in the morning, I'd wipe down the counter, restock cigarettes, check the pumps, and watch the security monitor because there was nothing else to do. There was no second employee after midnight, just me. The first weird thing I noticed was the man in the pickup. It was an older dark-colored truck, maybe black or dark green. Impossible to tell under those lights. It pulled in just after 1 a.m. one Thursday, rolled slowly past the pumps, then parked along the side of the building where the cameras didn't fully reach. I saw the headlights cut off, but nobody came inside. At first I assumed he was on the phone. 15 minutes passed, then 20. I stepped over to the front windows and tried to look out without making it obvious. From that angle, I could only see the back half of the truck. No movement, no door opening, no engine starting. Eventually, I told myself it wasn't my business. People parked there all the time. Some were smoking, some were arguing, some were just exhausted and sitting with the seat back. By 1:40 though, I was watching that truck more than I was watching the register. Then it left. No customer, no gas, just headlights on, slow reverse. Then it rolled back onto the road and disappeared. The same truck came back the next night. Same time, same side of the building, same thing. This time I got a better look at the driver when he pulled in. Older white man. Maybe late 50s or early 60s, baseball cap, pale face, one hand on the wheel. He didn't look drunk. He looked focused, like he was arriving for something specific. Again, he parked out of sight and stayed there for almost half an hour. When my manager came in the next morning, I mentioned it. He shrugged and said, "Probably someone meeting a dealer or a girl. Don't worry unless they come inside and act weird." That should have been reassuring, but it wasn't. Something about the way the truck just sat there, engine off, lights off, felt wrong. It wasn't the behavior of someone waiting. It felt more like watching. For the next week, he showed up 4 more times, always between 12:45 and 1:15, always parking on the blind side of the building. Always staying long enough for me to stop whatever I was doing and keep checking the windows. I started locking the back stockroom door, even though I was pretty sure only employees had access. I started carrying the heavy flashlight my manager kept under the register. I even moved a crate in front of the side exit that opened toward the dumpster area. One night, a regular named Denise came in around 1:20. She drove a bakery truck and always stopped for black coffee before her route. While she was paying, I glanced toward the side lot and saw the truck was there again. Without thinking, I asked, "Can you see if that pickup is still parked outside when you leave?" She looked through the window. "The one by the wall?" That made me feel better for maybe half a second because at least I knew I wasn't being paranoid. Then she said, "He's been there since before I pulled in." I asked if she could see the driver. She squinted, then her face changed a little. "Yeah." "What's he doing?" She didn't answer right away. Then she said very quietly, "He's looking in here." She left with her coffee and I watched her walk to her truck. I expected the pickup to start or move or do anything once another person was outside. It didn't. Denise got in, locked her doors, and before pulling away, she flashed her headlights at the side of the building twice like some kind of signal. A second later, the pickup started and drove off. When the red taillights vanished, I realized my hands were shaking. After that, I called my manager again and told him I didn't want to work nights alone anymore. He got annoyed and said if the guy wasn't threatening me, there was nothing to report. "You want me to call the cops and say a customer parked funny?" he said. "Just ignore him." So I tried. A few nights later, around 2 a.m., I was in the back cooler restocking drinks when I heard the front door chime. I called out, "Be right there," and pushed through the plastic strip curtain. Nobody was at the register. The front door was closed. The store looked empty. Then I noticed something sitting on the counter, a fountain drink cup, large, white lid, red straw. I hadn't rung anyone up. I stared at it for a second, trying to convince myself I'd somehow missed a customer, but that wasn't possible. The register screen was still on the previous sale. No one had passed me. No one had spoken. The only way that cup got there was if someone came in silently while I was in the cooler and left it right where I would see it. I walked to the window and looked outside. The pickup was parked beside the building. Driver's side empty. My whole body went cold. I grabbed the flashlight, came back around the counter, and checked the aisles one by one. Chips, canned food, automotive, beer cooler, bathroom. Nobody. Then I heard a soft tapping sound. 3 little knocks. Not at the front door. At the side employee entrance, the one near the stockroom. I stopped breathing for a second. That door had no window, no peephole, nothing. Just thin metal with a push bar and a deadbolt. The tapping came again, gentler this time, almost polite. Then a man's voice said through the door, calm as anything, "I think you dropped something." I didn't move. He tapped once more. "Open up." I backed away from the door and went straight to the phone behind the counter. My hands were so slippery I nearly dropped it. I called 911 and kept my voice low while staring at the hallway that led to the back. I told the dispatcher there was a man outside the employee door and his truck was on the side lot. She asked if he had tried to force entry. I said not yet. While I was still on the line, the voice came again, closer now, like his mouth was right against the metal. "I know you're in there." I remembered the dispatcher telling me officers were on the way, but all I could focus on was the sudden silence after that sentence. No footsteps, no tapping, nothing. Then, from somewhere much farther back, near the dumpster area behind the building, I heard the metal gate clang. He was moving. I killed the front lights, locked the register, and crouched behind the counter with the phone pressed to my ear. From where I was, I could see the security monitor mounted in the corner. 4 camera feeds: front door, pump area, rear hall, side lot. The side lot camera showed the pickup sitting empty. Then the rear hall camera flickered. For half a second, a face filled the frame. Not looking at the door, looking directly into the camera. The same man from the truck, pale skin, baseball cap, no expression at all. Then the feed cut to static. The dispatcher heard me swear and told me to stay hidden. I did. I kept watching that monitor, waiting for him to appear in the hallway, waiting for the stockroom door to shake, waiting for the front glass to explode inward. But nothing happened. 2 sheriff's deputies arrived within minutes. I saw the lights first, blue and red, washing across the pumps. They swept the building, checked the back, checked the lot, checked the road. The pickup was gone. So was the drink cup. One of the deputies asked if I was sure there had been a cup on the counter. I told him yes. He gave me the kind of look people give when they think fear is making you dramatic. But then the other deputy called him over to the back hallway. There, on the floor outside the employee entrance, was my name tag. I always kept it clipped to my shirt. That night, somehow, without me noticing, it had been taken off. I quit 2 days later. A month after that, one of the deputies came into the warehouse where I'd started working. He recognized me and asked if I still thought about the gas station guy. I told him I tried not to. He said they'd found the pickup abandoned in a field about 20 miles away. No plates, wiped clean, but in the bed of the truck, they found Polaroids. Dozens of them, different gas stations, different night clerks, photos taken through glass, from parking lots, from side alleys, some close, some far away. One of them was me, standing behind the register, taken from outside the front window on a night I never saw anyone there. I asked if they found the driver. He just said, no. That station got torn down years ago. New building, new pumps, bright LED lights, no blind side lot anymore. I passed it once on the highway and thought I'd finally stopped caring. Then I noticed something as I drove by. On the far side of the new building, just beyond the reach of the lights, an older dark pickup was parked with the engine off, and even from the road I could feel it facing the windows. By the time I took the graveyard shift at the county bus depot, I thought I was already used to lonely jobs. I'd done overnight stocking, security, even a month cleaning office buildings after hours. I knew the rhythm of places that weren't meant to be occupied at 3 o'clock in the morning. The way ordinary rooms changed when the crowd disappeared. The way every sound separated itself from the silence and started feeling intentional. But the depot was different from the start, because even when it looked empty, it never really felt empty. During the day, it was crowded, loud, and miserable. The kind of place where people were always running late and taking it out on whoever was closest. At night, though, the terminal became this huge hollow shell of fluorescent light, vending machines, plastic seats, and long tiled hallways that carried sound too far. My job was simple. I worked the information counter from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., sold the occasional ticket, answered questions, and called security if anyone got aggressive or refused to leave. Between 2 and 4 in the morning, the depot would almost die completely. A few buses still came through, but there were long stretches where the entire terminal belonged to maybe 5 people total, a sleeping traveler with his hood up, a woman guarding 3 suitcases, some guy pretending to charge his phone while really just trying to stay warm until sunrise. You started memorizing faces without trying to. That's why I noticed him the first night. He came in just after 2:15 wearing a dark jacket and carrying no bag. Mid-30s maybe, clean-shaven, short hair. Nothing dramatic about him at all. If I'd seen him in daylight, I probably wouldn't have remembered his face 10 seconds later. He walked straight past the ticket kiosks, glanced once at the departures board, and sat down at the far end of the terminal beneath a dead TV screen. I gave him maybe half a second of attention before looking back down at my phone. About 20 minutes later, I looked up again, and he was still sitting there, not sleeping, not reading, not looking at a phone, just watching the information counter. I remember telling myself not to be weird about it. People stare when they're tired. People stare when they're thinking. Still, something about how still he was bothered me. He didn't shift, didn't cross his legs, didn't even seem distracted, just sat with his hands on his knees, facing me. At around 2:50, an outbound bus to Pittsburgh boarded. A bunch of passengers stood, gathered their things, and moved toward Gate 6. The man stood too. For a second, I thought he was finally leaving. Instead, he walked halfway toward the gate, stopped, waited for the line to thin out, and then turned back around and sat in a different seat, closer this time. When security did their round about 10 minutes later, I mentioned him casually. The guard on duty was a heavyset guy named Warren who had been there forever and acted bored by everything. He looked over, shrugged, and said, "If he's got a ticket, he can sit." I asked if he should maybe check. Warren didn't even look again. "He ain't doing nothing." That was technically true. The man stayed another half hour, then got up and left through the front doors without ever asking a question, buying a ticket or boarding a bus. The next night, he came back. Same time, same empty hands, same calm walk. That was when I really started paying attention. He did almost the exact same thing. Sat far away at first, watched the counter, changed seats once the terminal got quieter, never used his phone, never bought food, never looked bored. There was this focus to him that made the rest of the terminal feel staged, like everyone else was background, and he was there for one specific reason. At 3:05, he got up and came to the counter. I felt relieved at first. There's something easier about a person once they finally act normal. He stopped in front of me and asked, "What time does the Richmond bus come through?" I checked the board and told him 4:10. He nodded like he already knew that. Then he asked, "You work alone every night?" The question landed wrong immediately. I gave him the kind of customer service smile that was really just a warning. "Security's here all night." He held my gaze for a second too long, then smiled back, but there was nothing friendly in it. Good to know. Then he walked away and sat down again. I called Warren the second he was out of earshot. This time, I didn't phrase it casually. I told him the guy had asked if I worked alone and I wanted him removed. Warren finally took it seriously enough to come over, but by the time he reached the seating area, the man was already gone. For the next 4 nights, he didn't come back. That should have made me feel better. Instead, it made me more tense because now, every time the front doors opened after midnight, I looked up expecting to see him. I started checking the reflection in the dark ticket office window behind me. I started keeping my keys between my fingers whenever I walked to the staff bathroom. I started timing my breaks so I was never in the back longer than 60 seconds. Then, on a Sunday night, just after 3:30, the phone at the information desk rang. That was unusual by itself. Hardly anyone called the desk directly at that hour. I answered with the standard greeting. For a second, all I heard was terminal noise from somewhere else. A faint announcement, a bus engine. Then a man's voice said, "You changed your break schedule." Every muscle in my body locked up. The voice wasn't loud. It wasn't rushed. It sounded almost conversational. I didn't answer. He continued, "You used to go to the back around 3:15. I looked across the terminal so fast my neck hurt. At first I didn't see him. Then I realized why. He wasn't in the seating area. He was standing beside one of the concrete support columns near Gate 4, half hidden by it, holding a phone to his ear and looking straight at me. I hung up immediately and called security. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. By then, he had started walking toward the counter. Not fast, not slow, just steady. I backed away from my chair and headed for the staff door behind the desk, the one that led into the employee hallway. I got through it, locked it, and the second I did, I heard his shoes stop on the other side of the counter area. Then came 3 slow knocks, not on the public side of the desk, on the locked staff door. That meant he had come around the side passage marked employees only. He'd either ignored the sign or already known it was there. I called security a third time while backing down the hall. Nothing. The employee hallway led past a storage room, a copier alcove, and a narrow break room with one small wired glass window in the door. I ducked into the break room, turned off the light, and crouched beneath that window with my phone in my hand, ready to call 911. Footsteps entered the hallway. Slow, measured, no hesitation at all. Then they stopped outside the break room. Through the wired glass, I could see only a warped slice of the corridor and part of his shoulder. He stood there without speaking for what felt like a full minute. I remember trying not to breathe too loudly. My heart was pounding so hard I thought the window would rattle from it. Then he said very softly, "I know this room doesn't lock right." I looked at the handle. He was right. The latch on that door had been bad for weeks. I'd complained about it twice. The handle moved a fraction downward, then stopped, like he was testing it gently. And then, from farther down the hall, another door slammed hard enough to make us both jump. What happened next is the only reason I'm sure I'm not telling this story from a much worse place. A voice shouted from the corridor behind him, angry and loud, "Hey!" Not security. Too rough. Too old. The man at the door stepped back immediately. I rose just enough to look through the glass. At the far end of the hallway stood Leon, one of the overnight janitors. He was in his 60s, mean-faced, and built like somebody who had been lifting things wrong his entire life. I had never been happier to see anyone. He was gripping a mop handle like a baseball bat. Leon yelled, "You deaf! Staff area, get out!" The man didn't argue. He just turned, looked at Leon for a second, and walked back the way he'd come. Not hurried, not embarrassed, just calm. Leon waited until he was gone before coming to the break room. When I opened the door, he took one look at my face and said, "That him?" I asked what he meant. He frowned. "Girl, before you said there was a guy hanging around at night asking questions. She quit." That hit me harder than everything else. Not because some creep had shown up, because it suddenly sounded practiced. Leon walked me back to the desk with the mop handle still in his hand. We found Warren asleep in the security office off the main lobby. Actually asleep. Chair tilted back, TV on, radio turned low. Leon nearly dragged him out by the collar. The police took a report, but without a name, a plate, or even good camera footage, it didn't go anywhere. Most of the cameras in that part of the terminal were old, grainy, and half the angles were useless at night. They pulled one image of the man near the counter, but it was blurry enough that his face looked almost blank. I quit 3 days later. A year after that, I was waiting in line at a pharmacy across town when I saw a missing person flyer taped near the register. It was for a woman in her 20s. Dark hair, blue jacket, last seen leaving an overnight shift at a transit terminal in the next county over. At the bottom was a line asking if anyone remembered seeing a man repeatedly waiting inside the station in the late night hours before her disappearance. I stood there staring at that flyer until the cashier asked if I was okay. I said yes, paid for my stuff, walked to my car, and before I unlocked the door, I checked the back seat first. I still do that now, every single time, because the thing that really stayed with me wasn't the way he watched me, or the phone call, or even his hand on that broken door handle. It was how comfortable he seemed in that empty terminal, like he'd done it before. When I started working nights at the self-storage facility, the manager told me the graveyard shift only existed because of insurance. "Nobody's supposed to be here after 10, he said while showing me the cameras. "But people cut fences, try doors, sleep in units, do dumb stuff. Your job is just to watch, log anything weird, and call police if you need to. Easiest money you'll ever make." That was the kind of thing people always said about overnight jobs. Easy because it was lonely. Easy because nothing happened. Easy because the worst part was staying awake. The facility sat at the edge of an industrial area where everything looked abandoned after dark. Machine shops, closed warehouses, empty lots full of weeds and broken pallets. During the day, our place looked normal enough. Rows of orange roll-up doors, chain link fencing, a keypad gate, a small office in front, and motion lights posted along the lanes. At night, though, once the traffic died and the nearby businesses went black, the whole property felt sealed off from the world. The lights only reached so far. Beyond them, the units seemed to go on forever. I worked alone from midnight to 6. Most of the shift was exactly what the manager promised. Sit in the office, watch the monitors, walk the rows every hour, check locks, write down license plates if anyone came through the gate before close and stayed too long. I brought coffee, snacks, and headphones. By 3 in the morning, the place usually got so quiet I could hear the electrical hum from the vending machine beside my desk. The first thing that bothered me was Unit C19. It wasn't special during the day. Just another medium unit in the older row near the back fence. But on my second week, during my 2 a.m. walk, I passed it and heard something metallic rattle from inside. Not loud, just a brief clink, like somebody shifting tools. I stopped and listened. Nothing. I checked the latch. Locked. Then I shined my flashlight at the door and noticed the lock had a fresh scrape around it, bright silver against the older worn metal. I wrote it in the logbook and forgot about it. The next night, same thing. Different sound this time. A faint thud, then a dragging noise that lasted maybe 2 seconds. Again, I checked the lock. Still secure. I called the manager the next morning and told him I thought somebody might be getting into that unit somehow. He asked if the tenant had late access privileges. I checked the file. No. He asked if the lock looked cut. It didn't. Finally, he said, "Probably mice or something shifting. If the unit was broken into, the alarm on that row would flag." That sounded reasonable, except there was no alarm on individual doors, just motion cameras and the gate log. Still, I let it go. A few nights later, around 3:15, I was in the office watching the monitors when one of the back row camera feeds flickered. It didn't go black. It just stuttered for a second, enough to make the picture jump. When it steadied, I saw a person standing halfway down row C. I leaned closer to the screen, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing dark clothes. The figure stood completely still in the lane between the units, just outside the pool of light, facing directly toward the camera. I couldn't make out a face, just a shape. I grabbed the flashlight and went outside right away, expecting to catch some trespasser before they could hop the fence. By the time I reached row C, nobody was there. I checked every lane, every corner, every gap between buildings. Nothing. The fence line was intact. The gate was still locked. No recent code entries, no cars. When I came back to the office and reviewed the camera feed, the figure was gone there too. The recording jumped from an empty lane to a flicker, and then back to an empty lane again, like I'd imagined the whole thing. After that, I started dreading the walk past C19. It wasn't just the noises anymore, it was the feeling around it. The units on that row all looked the same, but that one always seemed darker than the others, even with the light pole nearby. I'd catch myself slowing down before I got to it, listening harder than I needed to. Once I heard what sounded like whispering from inside, too muffled to make out words. Another time I thought I heard someone knock back after my flashlight accidentally bumped the door. 3 soft knocks from the other side. I went cold all over. I didn't mention that part to the manager. It sounded crazy even in my own head. Then one Friday night, just before 2:30, a sedan pulled up outside the front gate. That wasn't unusual by itself. People came to the wrong place at all hours and then realized we were closed. What was unusual was that the driver didn't press the keypad or turn around. He just sat there with the headlights on facing the office. After about a minute, he got out and walked to the window. He was an older man, maybe in his 60s, wearing a brown jacket and jeans. He knocked on the glass twice, and when I opened the little speaking slot, he asked if I could let him in to get something from his unit. I told him access ended at 10. He nodded like he expected that. Then he said, "My daughter is in C19. She's not answering her phone." I remember just staring at him. I asked what he meant, and he looked confused by the question. "That's her unit." I pulled up the file on C19. The tenant listed wasn't his daughter. It was a woman in her 30s named Rebecca M., paid through AutoPay. No missed balance, no notes. I told him the name on the account. His expression changed immediately. Not angry, not embarrassed, more like frightened confirmation. Then he said something I still think about all the time. She started renting it after she disappeared. I asked him to repeat that. He stepped closer to the glass. "My daughter went missing 8 months ago. Somebody has been using her driver's license in places 2 counties over. Last month, I got a call from a bank about a storage payment under her name. I traced it here." I didn't know what to say. Part of me thought he had to be confused or mentally unwell, but another part of me was already remembering the noises, the flickering camera, the dark figure in row C. I told him I couldn't let him in, but I could call police. He said very quietly, "Do that." 2 deputies came out within 20 minutes. While we were waiting, the old man stayed by his car and kept looking toward the dark rows behind the office like he expected somebody to come out of them. When the deputies arrived, I explained everything, including the repeated noises from C19. One of them asked if anyone had entered that night. I showed him the gate log. No entries since 9:41 p.m. We all went back together. The old man, both deputies, and me, because one of them wanted the master key in case there was some issue with the outer latch. Row C felt different with 4 people in it, but not better. The lane was silent except for our footsteps and the faint buzz of the pole light. When we reached C19, one deputy crouched and examined the lock. Then he looked up at his partner. The lock was on, but it wasn't latched through the door hasp. It had only been hooked to itself to look secured from a distance. The deputy pulled it free without using a key. I felt my stomach drop. The door rolled up halfway before jamming. Something inside was blocking it. The beam from the deputy's flashlight slid underneath first, then stopped. Nobody said anything for a second. Then the old man made this horrible sound behind me, like his body had recognized something before the rest of him caught up. Inside the unit, stacked near the front, were women's clothes, suitcases, bottled water, blankets, canned food, and a folding chair facing the gap beneath the door, as if someone had been sitting there in the dark, watching people's feet pass by outside. The deputies lifted the door higher. The rest of the unit came into view slowly. On the left wall were photos, dozens of them, printed snapshots taped in rows, women at gas stations, women behind counters, women unlocking cars, women leaving work alone at night. Some close enough to see fear on their faces because they'd clearly realized too late they were being photographed. And in the back corner, partly hidden by stacked bins, was a mattress. Nobody was on it, but it had been slept in recently. The deputies cleared the unit and the surrounding rows with guns drawn. They found a cut section of fence behind the dumpster trench at the rear of the property, hidden from the main cameras by the angle of a utility shed. Whoever had been using the unit had a way in and out that never touched the gate. They never found the person. Not that night, not later either, as far as I know. They did identify some of the women in the photos. One had been harassed outside a motel. Another had reported someone following her home from work. 2 were still missing. I gave my statement, quit the same week, and never went back. A detective called me months later to ask if I remembered anything else about the figure I'd seen on the camera. Height, build, clothes. I told him the truth. Not enough. Just a shape in the dark. He thanked me, then said they believed whoever used C19 had been coming there for at least half a year, using it as a place to watch people, store things. Wait, sometimes when I can't sleep, I think about that folding chair facing the bottom of the door, the patience of it. The way someone could sit in a locked unit, invisible from the outside, and study the movements of strangers by their shoes alone until he decided which one to follow next. But the part that bothers me most is smaller than that. The night we opened the unit, before the deputies lifted the door all the way, I saw something on the concrete just inside the gap. Fresh scrape marks, long curved ones, like somebody inside had pulled the door shut from below at the last possible second when they heard us coming.